We got this story from the Post-Millennial breaking. 2018 letter states Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels with his own funds Trump did not reimburse. Oh, geez. I wonder why it is that when the story first broke years ago, they did not move to indict Trump. Could it be that he didn't have anything to do with it? A 2018 letter from former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen's team to officials at the Federal Election Commission has revealed that the then president was not involved in the payment of alleged hush money to Stormy Daniels. The letter obtained by the Daily Mail stated that it was Cohen who paid Daniels $130,000 out of his own pocket. Quote, in a private transaction in 2016, before the U.S. presidential election, Mr. Cohen used his own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Miss Stephanie Clifford. Neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was a party to the transaction with Miss Clifford, and neither reimbursed Mr. Cohen in the payment directly or indirectly. Cohen's team went on to explain that neither Mr. Cohen nor Essential Consultants LLC made any in-kind contributions to Trump for president or any other presidential campaign committee, nor was Cohen a government employee at the time. Thus, they argued the payment in question does not constitute a campaign contribution or expenditure, and therefore the FEC lacks jurisdiction over this matter. Well, that's it.
There goes your story. There it goes. You can't indict him. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. Where is our country going if you're indicting a leading candidate for president on something which, by the way, this happened how long ago? Like, are we living in the past? This didn't happen recently.
This letter is from 2018. So here, we have the actual letter right here. You can see it from Daily Mail. It says, McDermott, Will, and Emery, February 8th, 2018, to the FEC. So the question is, did this individual, Stephen M. Ryan, counsel for Michael Cohen, lie to the FEC? Likely not. It's more likely that it's been a witch hunt the whole time. Democrats have been weaponizing the justice system to go after Donald Trump with lies and smears, and this proves that it's all bunk nonsense.
Yeah, and I would say Cohen wants payback because Cohen went to jail, which was really his own fault. He went to jail and he blames Trump, and he didn't get a new job, didn't get money with Trump, and so he turned into an anti-Trump guy. And this was part of his scheme to be able to grow his star on the left, being the guy who took down Trump.
Like
and so he's willing to lie.
Like Cheney, like Kinzinger, was it Joe Walsh?
Yep.
These people know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They're, you know what I think it is? People like Cohen go to prison, and then you'll see people like, Joe Walsh or whatever, and they're like, I know who butters my bread. I better just fall in line with the deep state.
100%.
Why would Cohen pay Stormy Daniels $130,000 anyway?
That part never made sense to me. I mean,
I think it makes sense. It's a question of personal issues that we're not privy to.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he's just super rich and is like 130 grand's not much to take the pressure off Donald Trump? I'm just going to do it for him kind of thing?
Maybe.
It could be this. Michael Cohen was the counsel for Trump, right? He was a lawyer for Trump.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a lawyer for a client, and the client says, listen, I need you to take care of these extraneous things. I'm not going to waste time with them, right? I'm busy with my campaign. And then Michael Cohen's thinking, this Stormy Daniels lady is causing me a headache. It's my job to deal with it, but she won't shut up and go away. I got it. I'll pay her off. That will make my job so much easier. Now, Donald Trump, in this scenario, this is hypothetical. Donald Trump doesn't go to Michael Cohen and say, pay her off, make her shut up. Donald Trump says, I don't know what this is all about. Figure out what's going on. I'm going to get back to work. You deal with it. And then Michael Cohen says, instead of doing my job, filing paperwork and having to deal with this, it's easier for me to just pay for her to go away personally and then just bill the hours to Trump. The Trump campaign likely then says, I have no idea what this is. Here's Michael Cohen. Here, this makes sense. Imagine that's what happened. They're claiming Trump paid the money to Stormy Daniels and called it legal fees. It's entirely possible Michael Cohen, according to this letter, did it himself and then without Trump's knowledge, billed Trump for the payment he made to Stormy Daniels, and Trump was just like, I guess we owe legal fees.
And so that's the $35,000 that Trump paid. Well, Trump paid Michael Cohen $35,000 a year later in October of 2017. There's a check from Trump to Cohen for $35,000.
Sure, and that can be anything though, man. Right. Look, when I get a legal bill, I tip it for the company. Like we get legal bills because of all the legal work that we do. Like I got to call a lawyer. Like we're going to file this, we're going to file that. New company, old company, copyright. I don't go through this whole itinerary. I call the lawyer and say, here's what we need done. I need this song trademark. I need this thing trademarked. We're launching an LLC for here. Get it done. Send me the invoice. They send me an invoice. I click pay.
Yep.
The thing is, though, if I had a lawyer and I owed and I wanted and they just went and gave someone $130,000, that would be the most insane situation.
Know. If you were a billionaire,
my
you
lawyer,
wouldn't
dude,
know.
they're trying to make money off me.
Yes. I explained it already. If I go to a lawyer and say, I need 5 new companies formed in the state of Delaware, and I need it done by next week. He goes, okay, I got it. Gets off the phone and then starts sweating, being like, how am I going to get 5 filings done in a week? So he calls his buddy at the office and says, listen, just shove it under the door. I'll give you a couple $100. Don't tell anybody. I need to get this done. That's not my fault if that person does that. I didn't tell him to break the law. I'm just saying hypothetically. It's I think the simple solution to this is, considering this letter, unless you think Michael Cohen committed more felonies with his legal team lying to the FEC, which I think is less likely. That's a bigger conspiracy, I suppose. What makes sense is Trump's got a lawyer and he's like, I don't hang out with the lawyer. I don't know what the hell the lawyer does. All I know is if he's like, I get an email, I send it to him, I say, you deal with it.
Yeah, it's like, won't somebody rid me of this priest? And then Cohen's like, I got you, buddy.
I could see
it. But
no,
but you misunderstand. I'm saying when I talk to my lawyer, I don't tell them what to do or say, won't someone rid me of this priest? I say, you tell me what you think needs to be done. You're my lawyer. I'm calling you for advice. Send me the bill. Michael Cohen then decided to take this action of his own volition because it was easier than actually doing his job. His job of negotiating a settlement or whatever his job may be. Maybe he was like, if this book comes out, I'm going to be drowning in legal paperwork. Trump's going to sue her, and then I'm going to have to deal with that. It's easier if I just pay her and don't tell anybody.
Whatever the case, I'm looking at there's very little to no evidence that Trump paid Stormy Daniels anything. Is that true now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's basically no evidence. And by the way, remember, Stormy said that they never had sex. Everybody forgets this. She said that back then.
Yeah, she just lied or something?
So we have on both sides of this, Cohen and Stormy both have a history of either lying or telling the truth in different scenarios because they've said both things. They're speaking out both sides of their mouth. So we know that they're lying. So these are proven liars. And in Michael's case, it sent him to prison. So we're supposed to take the words of these people. No serious prosecutor would take somebody like this and go, oh, I'm going to make this the crux of my case to take down a former president of the United States. That's ludicrous. And beyond that, I think Tim's exactly right. I can see it now in the Trumpian way. He's in there with Cohen. Cohen starts to bring something up. He goes, look, Michael, I just want you to take care of everything. I got the greatest campaign going on right now. The greatest campaign. I got to deal with that. You take care of everything else, okay? The checkbook's over there. and that's it,
And imagine this. Michael Cohen thinking, if Stormy does this book, I am going to lose a client because Trump's campaign could be ruined.
Yep.
Like, there's so many reasons why Michael Cohen would have done this of his own volition. Thinking like, Trump pays me X amount of $1 million or whatever as his lawyer. I get all these great billable hours. I can't let this Stormy lady ruin that for me. I'll just pay her off and won't tell anybody. And now they're trying to use that against Trump, who presumably literally, according to this letter, had nothing to do with it.
Well, it's protecting prestige, too, because the idea for Cohen was if Trump does pull this off and win, I'm going to get some prestigious job. I'm going to get to go to the White House with him. I'm going to be an even more important person. And you have to go into the psychology of a guy like that and the way he grew up and everything. It doesn't seem like he had the most, sort of like a, privileged background. He worked his way up to where he was and wanted to get to the next level and continue to impress the person he married and things like that. Because she's a crazy lib, by the way. But the White House would offer that ability, in his mind. And that could all be taken from him, too. I think that all plays into it. Honestly, your theory makes a lot of sense.
Considering this letter, I think that seems to be the most likely outcome. Not that I know for sure anything like that. But then one day, Cohen then says, you know what I'll do? I'll pay her off and then bill Trump as a legal fee. And he won't even know what it's for. And he's a billionaire. He probably just gets the bill and then says, whatever, pay Cohen. I don't know. He's the lawyer doing the job.
Regardless of the scenario, there's no evidence that Trump knew of any of this. Like, you can't take him down for something that Cohen did.
Yeah,
there's no
weird.
intention. There's no exchange of him knowing that this exchange took place.
I really don't like plausible deniability where it's obvious that you told someone to do something for you, but there's no paper trail. I can't stand that because that's the seed of corruption. But at the same time, there's no evidence that he told him to do it.
Right.
So Alvin Bragg, a Soros DA, is just lighting fire to this country. For what? I think it may not be about Trump. So this is a Soros DA. So much of what we've seen from them has been DC comic book villainy. Release the inmates from Arkham Asylum. They're doing it all across the country. This may be more indict the president by any means necessary to rip this country apart.
Yep, light a fire. Watch what happens. Watch everything burn. I definitely fall in line with that. I mean, I wrote a story. I was warning people about these Soros prosecutors probably about 5-6 years ago. I wrote a couple major pieces, one in the New York Post, about how Soros was using DAs to tear apart the fabric of America. And it totally makes sense if you think about it and you look at the micro level on what these DAs are doing to these cities and changing just the window of acceptability that people have about what they're willing to put up with and what is normalized and what is criminalized suddenly. Suddenly, violent crime is no longer important. Suddenly, violent speech is important, okay? And what they frame as violent speech becomes important. And wrong ideas become more and more dangerous. But actually going and breaking into somebody's house with their car, no, that's no big deal. That's just to be expected if you live in one of these hellholes. And I think that the reality that we're seeing play out here is these people keep amping it up time after time and time again. And this guy's just taking it to the next natural level, which is to start the biggest fire they've started yet.
Yep. That's why people are saying, why would he try to indict Trump on this? Because this isn't what matters. The indictment is what matters. That's why I have a feeling I'm like, okay, so he was supposed to get indicted yesterday, then it was today, now it's not happening this week apparently. But I got a feeling this dude's going to do whatever he can to just file it so that it hits the press. It's going to enrage Trump supporters. It's going to cause, these woke libs to be like, woo, and hooting and screaming. It will be lighting a fire on this, lighting this country on fire.
Yeah, and there's actually DC consultants that truly believe this is going to hurt Trump. Okay? I live in Tennessee. And I can tell you, this is not going to hurt Trump, okay? The people who are on the fence, because maybe they were upset about the vaccine, or maybe they were upset that J6 people were not given a pardon before he left, the nonviolent ones, or maybe they were upset that he gave the Presidential Commendation Medal to Fauci. Whatever the reason, the reason was, they were upset, okay? Even a lot of those people are going, oh no, this is a line we can't cross in America. This is something we cannot accept, and we're not going to accept political prosecutions. You know what? Trump's my guy now, because he's the one that's going to have to take this on, because they're personally going after him, and he's going to make it personal. And we need somebody who's going to make it personal and be a fighter against this. And I think they're going to be really, really in for a surprise when they see how the poll numbers continue to turn toward him if they do this.
Yeah, we're in a kind of a culture of victimhood where victimhood makes you powerful. So I don't understand why they don't realize that victimizing Trump is going to make him more powerful or seem more powerful. He's like relegated himself to the corner of the internet on his own social network. Barely anyone hears from him. It's like radio silence. People are talking about DeSantis, and yet this liberal media company, these people are still bringing him into the spotlight. It's the same dumb thing they did in 2016 and got him elected. Hillary Clinton got him elected because all she did was talk about him.
There's some people who think that this is also intentional to boost him because they would rather face him in a general. I tend to disagree with that. I think that they're genuinely still so hung up on Trump, and they're still so incensed by him, and they're still so fearful of the idea of populism rising in America that they're willing to do anything to take him down because of the idea he represents. And I think that's what they really fear, and we'll see. We'll see how it plays out here. But I really think, just like Tim, they're going to indict him. I think that there's no question they're going to do that. And if it's not this, they're going to do it in Georgia with the Georgia case. But there's a couple different prosecutors, all far left, who have this as basically the crux of their campaign was going after Trump. One of them, if not multiple, and I tend to think it's going to be multiple, are going to drop indictments on him. And I've been saying that for a long time. I know Jack Posobiec has. I think you did too before on a show like 6 months or a year, maybe even a year ago. You said you thought they would indict him.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is something, it was not a secret. We all kind of saw this coming, that if you elect crazy people like this who campaign on this, one or two of them is going to go and actually do it. And that's where we're at.
And they'll make up whatever reason. There doesn't need to be a reason.
They don't need a reason. In fact, it's better that it's this, when we're talking about the fire starting method that they're kind of going after and causing division, than it is that it was a blatant murder on camera. Because that wouldn't cause the type of division they seek to cause. And that's Marxism at its core. Dividing people has to happen because you've never seen Marxism or leftism thrive in a happy country. It only comes to be in chaos. So you have to create chaos. It's why these Antifa people look like they're out of a Batman movie, and you pulled them out of a mental institution, and the
Arkham.
Joker's brought them out, and is like, hey, you guys are going to work, let's go do this. Because if you look, like, every time I see the Andy No post where he's got like 40 Antifa people in a lineup, they look like they're out of Arkham Asylum every single time.
100%.
Dude,
every
SSRIs all up in that.
Oh, yeah.
And-
Adderall, God knows what psychotropics they're on legally.
And the funny thing is, we're living in a comic book story, man. Trump is this billionaire who runs for president to try and fix the problem and fight back against a globalist elite, and all that stuff. And then you got the villains are literally getting elected with an evil billionaire's money and then releasing the criminals. Imagine if you opened a Batman comic. No. Let's just say a Justice League comic. And Batman is meeting with Superman. Superman walks in and he's like, the alarms are all going off in the watchtower. Superman's like, Batman, Bruce, what's happening? And he goes, all over the United States, criminals are being released from their prisons. How? It's Luthor. He used his vast wealth to get a bunch of district attorneys into power, who then started releasing criminals on the streets, wreaking chaos. And then the conflict of the story is like, how do you get these criminals back in jail when it was done through a legal process? This is why I always liked Lex Luthor as a villain, because he had the arc where he is a legitimate businessman. I love the arc where he runs for president, does it legitimately, and Superman can't touch him. That's what we're seeing with these Soros DAs, with the woke left politicians going after Trump in this way. Releasing the criminals is as comic book villain as it gets. And we all know it's happening. I mean, come on.
I want to know, who are we in the comic book? That's an interesting question. But beyond that, when you look at this, one of the real problems is the weakness of the institutions on the right, and the we'll call it the Republican Party in general, but it's really sort of the old guard Republicans, because they can't say they weren't warned. They had people warning them this was going to happen, and they didn't even try to fight it. They didn't even try to stop it. They didn't try to put up some independent and fund them really well in these races. They didn't try anything to try to stop these Soros DAs. They just sort of thought, hey, they sound crazy. They're saying crazy stuff. That helps us because we can cut ads of them saying crazy stuff. And the truth is, no, we're not living in that world anymore, guys. You let communists into power and you let them destroy a country. We're not talking about the ads for your next cycle because they said some crazy thing.
We were talking about this with Troy Nails yesterday. He's a good dude. And I feel a little bad because it was more like me getting angry and then kind of just yelling. Because I'm like, instead of looking at what Democrats do to win, it's just this defeatist mentality about the 2020 election being stolen. And then that's when I brought up you. And I'm like, I think it was Phil Labonte, he was on the show, and he mentions Ronna McDaniel winning with Harmeet Dillon running for RNC chair. Some real change. After all this failure and defeat, they just keep doing the same thing. And then I'm like, look at what the RNC does to Robbie Starbuck. He's like this up and coming, very prominent. He's younger. Everybody's super into him.
Handsome,
yeah,
tall,
and they're
tall,
like,
very tall,
yes, absolutely,
strong,
like, this
magnificent
guy
ponytail.
should be a new voice in Congress, and the Republican Party removed you.
Yeah. What happened with that? What exactly happened?
They decided that they wanted somebody else. And this sounds so crazy to people. They can't believe it because I've never heard of it happening before. Like, I didn't even know this was a thing that was possible. You can go run a race for over a year. You can win over the hearts and minds of people. You can be just killing everybody in the polls. And all of a sudden, some people can get together and be like, well, we've decided we don't want you to be the standard bearer of our party. We think that could not be a good thing for us, so we're going to go ahead and choose somebody else so you can't be on the ballot. It's like, I thought I lived in America where people get to vote and decide who they want. I went out there, we knocked more doors, we called more people, I did more events, I worked my tail off. Other people didn't. They hid in their houses, okay? And they worked this machine behind the scenes to get the support of party bosses. And then they go, oh, what's in the bylaws? What secret rules can we pull out that people have no clue about and use that to get rid of somebody who we consider dangerous? And I'll tell you this, personally. I personally think a big reason why what happened to me happened was because I spoke out so forcefully against big pharmaceutical companies, and because everything was okay until that point. But when I started to go after them over what was happening throughout this entire past few years, and I started to really delve into how they were profiting on the backs of American people and on sickness, and going into how we really need to look at changing things, because it's the reason why so many young people go over and get attracted by socialism and the ideas of healthcare for all and things like that, because we do have a sick care system, not a healthcare system. And it's broken, and we allow these big pharmaceutical companies to start right away. You know, if you're a kid on TikTok, you're getting ads already for what medication you need because you have anxiety. You know, they're already pushing this stuff from the earliest stage they can on everybody. And we've allowed it for so long. And that is when they really started to get angry at me, is when I wouldn't let go about reforming some of these policies around big pharmaceutical companies.
I think it was before that.
It might have been, but I
think there's an
personally
old
attach it to that
paradigm,
time.
a good old boy system that is very much kiss the ring. You know, you play along to get along. You just do things a certain way. But that old paradigm doesn't work. There's a new right of activists, and we won't survive, not just as a party, but as our values, everything, if we don't raise up activists. And Robbie's an activist, and so that doesn't fit into that old paradigm.
Because that system, they want politicians. They want you to talk to them in the back room about the real stuff. But then in front of people, or if you go on a show, they want you to have these perfectly coiffed, and I can do them. I could give you guys political answers all night that, like, I'm saying nothing, meaning nothing, but it's an answer technically. And that's what they want from their politicians. They want them to say nothing, mean nothing. Yep. I want people where I know exactly where they stand. I want to know if I hate them. I want to know if I love them. I think that's what people deserve. That's what our founders did. You go back and read our founders, and I encourage every young person who's listening, go back and read their writings if you've never had. These people were brilliant writers. And you have to keep in mind when you read these, most of these people did not go to school. They taught themselves how to write. They taught themselves the art of language. And you read their writing, it is the most brilliant, stands every test of time. I mean, they could literally write about you going to the bathroom in a lake and it would sound exquisite, okay? I don't know how they did this, but they pulled it off. Read this and you see that these were forceful men. These were men who had convictions. They stood for something. They were willing to die for it. Where are those people today? Where are our rebels? Where are the people who are a rebel with a cause, not just somebody who's like, you know, hooked on drugs and do stupid things, somebody with a cause who says, I am willing to go all the way. I'm willing to die for what I believe in because it is so important. We had those men once, and it's the reason we're all sitting here, but not having those men is the reason why our children will not have the same opportunity unless we actually fix it, raise up a generation of activists.
Jeffrey Whitty in the chat mentioned they were all 24 years old.
Yeah.
Not all of them. I think Benjamin Franklin was a bit older.
Some of them were a little older. But some
Thomas
were as young
Jefferson
as 18.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. Imagine you're like 18 and you own property and you're like running a farm with a wife and like you have a kid already.
You signed the Constitution. You signed the
Declaration of
Constitution.
Independence.
Yeah.
You know, like told the king, screw off, try me.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, those people had balls.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this generation's like,
well, look, here's the thing. Back in the day, the founding fathers, they didn't work, they didn't eat. Yeah. And so when the crown is pushing on them and taking from them, they're like, listen, I work every day to feed my family, and then you come and you take no more. Mm-hmm. It's the inverse now. These millennials are like, look, every day I wake up and you provide, so I will do whatever you say.
Right.
Yep. Remind me again, too, when we talk about like the Boston Tea Party, the tax raise at the time, it was equivalent to like...
It was 2%?
Not even 2%, I think. Somebody
pretty
could look
low.
it up. I want to give people the real number. I don't know if you guys can look it up, but it was tiny. Now politicians throw around things all the time, like Biden the other day is like, I want to add an extra 38%. I want to add this. They want to tax everything. These guys were willing to die for, what was it?
It was a protest of the Tea Act. And
the Tea Act
to undercut the price of illegal tea smuggled into the British colonies. Basically, it was going to make it so that they had to pay more for tea that came from the East India Trading Company.
But it was like the equivalent of today, like less than 2% hike in the cost.
Was it just like the final straw of a bunch of things that have been building and building?
The act granted the company the right to directly ship its tea to North America and the right to the duty-free export of tea from Britain. Although the tax imposed by the Townshend Acts and collected in the colonies remained in force, it received royal assent. So I don't think it was specifically about taxes. I think it was about, it was about taxes, but it was about, what is it?
The tax passing on the cost.
86% of all tea in America was smuggled Dutch tea. Right. So all of a sudden the cost of tea was going to skyrocket because they were like, no, you now have to buy from this company because they're beleaguered and they need your sales.
Yep.
Or they need your purchases.
Well,
and the skyrocket, again, is like around what would be equivalent to today, like a 2% hike, in your overall cost. Today, they could propose a 50% extra tax on us and people just go along with their day and they're happy to scroll the phone and like no big deal. Back then they were like, no, 2%, we're going to go die for this.
Okay.
We'll burn the ships.
I'm sorry, the Townshend Acts was a series of taxes and regulations to fund the administration of the British colonies in America. And that was a tax hike that pissed everybody off because then tea became ridiculously expensive.
What year was that?
Indirect tax on glass, leads, paints, paper, and tea, all of which had to be imported from Britain. Then when they were told you now have to buy the East India Company's tea and you can't smuggle it anymore, it's like, well, now tea's expensive. So they threw it in the harbor.
And what we got going on today is inflation, which is causing the price of goods to go up because of the supply chain problems and all other reasons. And so we can't blame them for taxing us, even though they've caused the cost to go up.
We can.
Me and Tim are like, yeah, we absolutely can blame them. Yes.
Yeah, look at the Federal Reserve. I blame them for all of it.
I think Tim and I are on like the same monetary train, and we don't have enough people in Congress who are on the same train. Like, I think that the vast majority of taxes out there are blatantly criminal. They're blatantly criminal. We need a flat tax, if anything, that is just very easy, very fair. Get rid of the IRS. Just have a flat tax.
I don't know if I'm on board with a flat tax necessarily. I'm closer to Steve Bannon on this one, but not as far as he goes, because Bannon wants a wealth tax, and I'm like, I'm not for that. But Bannon's position is the wealthy elites are ripping us off, and they're rigging the game in their favor. And I'm like, it's very populist of you. I mean, it's like an Occupy Wall Street position. He's like, well, it's true. And so he's like, I'm all for the wealth tax. Tax the
bikini waxes.
Tax all these billionaires and take everything from them. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't go that far, but I'm somewhere in the middle, I guess. And it's really funny that Bannon's got like a traditional liberal position on taxation.
Well, I think that's a lot of populists, and I tend to agree with him. Here's the thing that I would tell conservatives who for a long time defended not raising taxes on somebody like Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos hates you. The billionaire class, they hate Republicans more than anything. They hate populist Republicans. They hate all Republicans, okay? There's very few exceptions to that rule. There's maybe 3 or 4 billionaires I know who are more conservative leaning. All the rest that are very publicly well known, they're extremely far left, and if they're not personally, they allow their image to be presented as such because it's beneficial to them. So really they have no values, which in turn to me means you're a leftist, because if you have no values, you stand for nothing. You're allowing everything to happen that's happening with our culture and society being torn to shreds. And so I'm not going to go fight for these people. I'm not going to go fight for Jeff Bezos to be able to keep more money. This dude built his company on a crooked idea that Amazon, if you ran it at a loss for long enough, would build up enough of a market share to kill so many competitors that you suddenly hold so much market share that you can raise the prices on everything and nobody can really do anything because you're such a big business, you're undefeatable at that point. And that's what they've done. He did a great job doing it. He worked and gamed the system beautifully in terms of success, but he gamed the American people at the same time. That was not a true sort of presentation of capitalism. Capitalism doesn't present as, hey, lose money for 15 years and then let's see what happens, like it's a perverted system of it. And so people like that, I'm not going to fight for him to not have to pay more, but for your regular middle-class person, absolutely. The amount we tax people is ridiculous.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.